where we draw the line at Charlotte Pride is we have our programming. We know what we want to say as an organization. We know what's important to say in these times. And so if you, as a corporate partner, have any issues with any of the stance or the ways in which we've communicated the values of this organization and it doesn't work for you, then that's fine. You can't tell us how to run the organization. You are supporting us because you believe in the mission and the values of the organization.
Hello, and welcome to Power Beyond Pride, a weekly queer change-making podcast bringing you voices and ideas from across our fierce and fabulous spectrum to transform our world. I'm Shane Lukas. I am a lifelong harm reductionist, activist, and frankly, guy who knows all the words to She-Bop.
I am Mattie, Bynum, the hostess of the mostest. I am an actress, comedian, activist, and we are your co-hosts today on this queer-cast journey. In this episode, we are talking to Daniel Valdez, a Mexican-born Chief External Affairs Officer at Welcoming America and a board member of the Charlotte Pride. With more than 15 years of nonprofit management experience, Daniel is passionate about helping advance the mission of organizations and communities working on systematic changes to bring greater prosperity and opportunity for everyone.
Welcome, Daniel. We're happy to have you join us today.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here with you all, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
We are too. You've been on the board of Charlotte Pride for 8 years, which is a long time. And as a proud member of the Charlotte queer community, you've served in various capacities to support organizations. So we're happy to have you share some of that experience about what it is to be in leadership there in Charlotte, and then also your own lived experience and really understanding about your history with movement work. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey and what it was like moving to the U.S.?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. I was born in Mexico, as was mentioned earlier. I was born in Acapulco, which is a small sort of port city in Mexico. Lots of hot beach weather. My parents brought me to the U.S. when I was about 3 years old. So I grew up mostly in the States. First to California, and then in the 1990s, my family in the late 90s moved to Charlotte, or right outside of Charlotte. I grew up in rural North Carolina, actually about 45 minutes or so outside of Charlotte. I was about 12 years old, so moving from the suburbs of LA to North Carolina in the late 90s was something very different for me. And
were you the cool kid? You had to have
no,
coming from LA, there had to have been, come on, some kids must have been like so much cooler than like showing up in rural North Carolina.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it was definitely for some of the folks who had never, the school that I went to a rural town. And so it was like 95% white, 5% Black, and like very few Latino folks. And so I think that for a lot of folks, they weren't used to having folks, for example, speaking a different language. And so I can remember, for example, in middle school, being told that we speak English here in America and that I should not speak Spanish and go back to my country. Those kinds of things were the first things that I experienced growing up, I guess, in the South, and particularly in a very small rural community. But it also, I think, lit under me that fire that I have around advocacy and work. And I remember telling this person that the last time I checked, the United States didn't have a official language, and that folks can speak whatever language they want to speak here, right? And so I think that to me is always something that I think about, right? It was the first time, when I was 3 years old till about 11, when I was in California, right? It was a dual language immersion type of schooling. So I had classes in English and in Spanish, and everyone looked like me, or at least was comfortable with folks that looked like me if they didn't look like me. And so coming to a different place, right? That sense of belonging and welcoming was something that I experienced, both in good ways, and also the sense of othering is something that I also experienced. And so, yeah, I came to North Carolina. My parents were looking for job opportunities. There was a lot of construction work happening in North Carolina, and they wanted to buy their home. They wanted to make sure that their kids were able to go to school. And so my parents, brought us to North Carolina. I grew up there. I was the first person in my family to go to college. And I stayed in Charlotte, not to be too far away from my family. So I went to Charlotte, to the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. And there sort of where my work sort of kicked off and started going. In college was when I realized this sort of world of nonprofit work and advocacy work and grassroots organizing. I was asked to volunteer as part of one of my classes, and I volunteered with a local Latino nonprofit in Charlotte and started doing advocacy work. And I'm sure we'll get into it in a minute, but yeah, it's a little bit about me. I was born in Mexico, came to the US when I was very young, and my family ended up in North Carolina because they were seeking a better life for their family, for their kids, and trying to find more sort of economic mobility opportunities. I've been there ever since, and I've gotten to learn to love North Carolina. I love Charlotte. I love the community that I've built there, and I've used as much of my time as I can to give back and to participate in the local community. And I'm excited to share more about that in a little bit, particularly through my work with Charlotte Pride.
Well, that's wonderful. I will also say I get the upbringing and I can understand it. And I do agree with you in the sense where I think it made me a stronger person today to go through some of the obstacles that we go through, especially, and Shane, you probably attest this, when you grow up in a more rural farm area, there's a lot more closed-mindedness and they have these preconceived notions of what life is supposed to look
Mhm.
like. Because everybody and my brother has that Mayberry mentality, that small town mentality. So I definitely agree with that. I did want to ask you, Daniel. So I know you talk about Charlotte Pride with I spent many a year going to
Mhm.
Charlotte Pride. Even when I lived in Charlotte, love it, love it. Could you talk to us a little bit about, especially now, the climate of Pride in the United States? Like, how's that happening? What's going on with the big funders? Are they pulling out? Is the city still rallying behind you? And also, just has it grown since it first started in 2017 to now?
Yeah, so Charlotte Pride, we're celebrating 25 years. So the organization was founded back in 2000, and our first festival was in 2001, and we used to do it in a private property because at that time we had more. I wasn't around then. I was definitely not in Charlotte at the time, but from what I know from the folks that volunteered at that time, we had more protesters than we did folks attending, and so we were in private property for a really long time. And in 2011, we moved to Uptown Charlotte. For those of you who are familiar with Charlotte, sort of this downtown area, we sort of refer to it as Uptown, but Tryon Street, and we've been there ever since. And we average about 250,000 people over the weekend. So it's a pretty big pride. We're one of the largest prides in the region. And it's grown tremendously over the years. We are the largest festival, and particularly the largest parade. And last year we had over 11,000 people march in our parade,
Oh,
not counting all
wow.
of the folks who were in the audience. So it's pretty big. I started volunteering with Charlotte Pride around 2015, so almost 10 years. And when I started, it was an all volunteer led effort. So all of the folks on the board were basically the ones putting on the festival. So I spent an average of 20 to 30 hours a week throughout the year. So for an entire year, we put together a group of very much dedicated 15 or so volunteers. We're all putting in so many hours to put the festival together. I became the board chair of Charlotte Pride, I think in 2016, 2017, maybe. And one of the first things that I did was try to make sure that we could raise enough funds to bring in full-time staff that could
Mhm.
actually put their time, energy, and all of their capacity into such a big event. This, like I said, is not sustainable to put on such a big event with just volunteers. We still to this day rely heavily on volunteers, but we were lucky enough to have a very successful festival that allow us to expand and to bring in staff. So right now we have 3 full-time staffers who are with Charlotte Pride, and they're the ones sort of running the show. Still on the board, we still do a lot of different things. We still support in different ways, but we've been very lucky. And Charlotte Pride itself as an organization has grown, not just from the folks that come every year to the festival and the parade, but we do programming throughout the year. One of the biggest focus of our work and one of my visions for Charlotte Pride was that we were going to be more than just a festival. So we do a number of different things throughout the year for our community. That includes things like a job fair that we host every year. We're working with local employers. And at the job fair, folks can come put their resumes in with all of these employers. They can also get help putting together their resume. We provide headshots for folks as well. We work with other organizations to provide resources. There's a lots of barriers for people in the workplace. And if you drill down, particularly, for example, for trans community members, that there's a lot of stigma and discrimination. And so knowing that they can come to a job fair where the employers are willingly there and want to hire people from our community makes a big difference in the way people want to be hired by these companies or are showing up to work in these places, because it makes a big difference. We also run a scholarship and internship program where we provide folks in our community scholarships for college, as well as an internship program with us over the summer. We also host the city's only LGBTQ film festival called Real Out. Of course, we have our big festival and parade, and then we also do an interfaith service the Sunday before Pride Week in Charlotte, which is in August. And we bring together leaders from different faiths, and we have an event together to sort of kick off the work of Charlotte Pride for that week. So we try to do a lot of different things, and our work has grown and expanded over the years. We do lots of different partnerships, and we work really closely with other queer organizations across the city. And we're also very active in our Inner Pride movement, which is an international association of pride organizers. So pride organizers from all over the world who are in similar situations as ours. It might be bigger prides, smaller prides, but the idea is that we're all able to work together to learn from one another. And we're able to participate in these conferences that are hosted for pride organizers. What are some of the things that are happening in other communities and how they're innovating in the events that they're doing, and just sharing and learning from one another.
If you don't mind, we do have to go to break. Just give us a few moments to pay these bills, and then we'll be right back, okay? So stay tuned with us as we are here at Power Beyond Pride.
Welcome back. This is Power Beyond Pride, a queer change-making podcast, and I'm Shane here with my gorgeous co-host, Mattie. And we are talking with Valdez, who is just an absolute force in shaping and building the power that is Charlotte Pride. And Charlotte, North Carolina's Pride is really one of the sort of pinnacle across the country in terms of its growth and its size and its impact and its community investments. Your work supporting Pride has not only gotten notoriety for receiving the Stonewall Award, which again, congratulations for receiving that. That's Charlotte's highest level. But it's also, I think, shown in, like you said, the way that Charlotte Pride has grown. So I'm curious in the current climate, and I think it would be impossible to talk about the current moment without addressing the kind of uncertainty or the challenges that many prides have felt, but also what the investment in corporate partnership has meant. So I'm curious from your own experience, because a lot of prides have grown and expanded based on that relationship with corporate partners. And now we're seeing those corporate relationships change, I guess, as I'm going to be real nice, and I'm going to use this other diplomatic term and say that there has been shifting within those movements. How are you seeing that change? And then do you feel like, and I'm, as a member of the NGLCC, like I think about how deep those corporate relationships were without thinking about what cementing LGBTQ plus rights were. So there's a lot of relationship building, but not a lot of rights changing that happened during that time. How are you approaching this new moment in developing Pride, and certainly one of the more significant prides in the country?
Yeah, no, thank you. Well, I mean, I think it is important for me, at least, and when I think about sort of the growth and trajectory of Charlotte Pride, thinking about the diversifying of our portfolio when it comes to funding and resources to do the work that we want to do. And so I think that has always been something that I've been really thinking about for a really long time. But it is true that a lot of the prides really rely on sponsorship, a sponsorship model, right? And when I was talking a little bit about the Interpride organization, right, that's a place where we're learning from each other. Like, how are you fundraising? What are the ways that you're getting creative about thinking about this resourcing of this work? And learning not just from the United States, but from other places around the world, how they're doing that. And so a couple of things. One is we've really thought about how can we become more than just a festival and provide programming throughout the year, which I think opens us up to be able to receive funds and grants from foundations and entities that are not corporate, but that are really thinking about the mission of the organization and what we're trying to accomplish. And that can be appealing, particularly to local funders in the area. So that's been an area where we've been really lucky to work with organizations like the Hispanic Federation or the Arts and Science Council and those kinds of entities that are really interested in supporting organizations like Charlotte Pride that are providing some resources and programming to our community. The other is thinking about our individual fundraising strategy. Folks want to have a strong pride. They want to be able to make sure that we have the resources to put on this event. And so we launched our Friends of Pride individual giving campaign, and it's sometimes it is a challenge, right? Because there's so many worthy causes that people can donate and give to. And so just wanted to make sure that we let folks know that all of the work that we do really goes on for us to be able to put on a free event that everyone in the community can enjoy. And in order for us to have the resources to do that, we need support, and we need support from individuals. And so that's another area. But by and large, corporate sponsorships. And so a couple of things with corporate sponsorship. We know that building relationships is key and important for this work. And so we've been really lucky to have really strong relationships with some of the local leaders in these corporations who are dedicated to making sure that their companies are showing up, are being visible, are coming to the table and providing resources so that we can put on a festival. And so we've been really lucky to have a really strong partnership. Now, of course, there's only so much that can take you, particularly in the climate that we're in, right? I think that what we're seeing is that the federal government and this administration is really putting out a lot of different pressures on different sectors and entities to stop funding things like Charlotte Pride or stop funding things around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we have to be able to talk to our communities about ways to really push back against that. We have had some companies that have said, look, leadership is telling us that we can't be visible on some of these things, or we'll give you some funds, but we can't have our logo on here, or we can't give you as much as we've given you in the past. And to some extent, every year, we see an ebb and flow of corporate partners coming in and out of this work. But I think in the current climate, that has certainly been something that's very challenging for us. And we are working really hard to keep our corporate partners engaged and letting them know that this really is important for them to do and to be a part of. And at the same time, I think it continues to be a reminder that we have to be really thoughtful about how we go about doing the work that we do and making sure that we're bringing in individuals and other sectors that can help support this work for the long term. And we're trying to navigate those two things at the same time. And I have to say, it is very difficult, particularly given that a lot of our costs aren't really things that we can cut back. These are security costs, these are permitting, these are logistical, operational costs. A good chunk, if not the vast majority of our budget goes to those things. And you really can't come back on those things. So at this point, we're in this place where our festival costs a certain amount of money because of all of the security, logistical, and operation components that are needed in order for us to put that in place. And some prides have gone to charging a small fee for entry or thinking about ways to charge folks to come to certain aspects of a festival. We're not there yet. We've been really lucky. We've put some reserves together over the past few years, and we've been really lucky to have some really strong corporate support. And recently, we've also been lucky to receive some support from our local county, which is the first time. And I think it's really important to showcase that that municipalities and local government can support these kinds of efforts and are doing so. And we're really lucky to have Mecklenburg County believe in this work and want to support us.
One of the questions I have as somebody who's been an activist for a long time is there have been a lot of corporate sponsors that have entered in the conversation and never really a lot of asks of them.
Yeah.
So a lot of organizations in the past, I feel, have taken money without really ever asking that those organizations actually deliver meaningful changes or inclusive practices.
Yeah.
Or that we even looked at, and I'll use Exxon as an example, because Exxon has certainly sponsored plenty of things.
Yeah.
Looked at the potential implications of those companies. And actually other banking institutions too would be another example. Did not have practices or particularly destructive to queer folks.
Yeah.
So is this a moment to sit back as a set of prides across the country? Again, I know you can't speak for all of Interpride, but as working with this one, to think about what the purpose was in the first place.
Yeah.
Because it did grow big and it did become a party. And as somebody, again, who's been very active, I'm a sponsor of several prides, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I always come back to who is it for?
Yeah.
And I guess, is this a moment you're having conversations about, hey, like we invited Target in and Target's been here for a long time. And well, when push came to shove, we got shoved, right?
Yeah.
So is there a reason to have a conversation? Because I worry that at some juncture, should the temperature change, are we just going to be back here again and taking money from, again, a fuel company who does harm, for example, in low income communities in the United States where queer people live? And then we're like, well, they gave us 5,000, so rainbow flags on. How are we navigating that conversation right now?
Yeah, that's a really tough conversation, particularly when you think about the folks that are, expected and have the privilege. I consider myself having this privilege, right, to be able to put on this kind of event, and knowing at the same time that there's this pressure to like deliver on something for the community and the resources that are needed. That's the reality of it. But yeah, absolutely. I think that one of the things that I think about when engaging with corporate partners is this an opportunity for us to have deeper conversations? So we try to do things like, if you are coming in as a sponsor, we'd like to find ways to connect with your employees throughout the year. We want to do a lunch and learn. We want to come and talk to them about the ways that other companies are thinking about equity. We work a lot with their employee resource networks and their groups to showcase some of the ways that other corporate partners or other institutions are thinking about policies that are inclusive and that are pro our community, and making sure that we're trying to create that space for them. At the same time, there is certainly an opportunity for us as a pride organization locally to sort of bring this conversation into light. And we've had situations where there might be a corporate sponsor who wants something specific that is not something that we want to do. And I think where we draw the line at Charlotte Pride is like, we have our programming. We know what we want to say as an organization. We know what's important to say in these times. And so if you, as a corporate partner, have any issues with any of the stands or the ways in which we've communicated the values of this organization and it doesn't work for you, then that's fine. You can't tell us, how to run the organization. You are supporting us because you believe in the mission and the values of the organization. And those are really challenging conversations to have, particularly, again, when you are an organization that is in a lot of ways very dependent on this. I tell folks that really, if we want to be able to have that leverage where we could say to folks like, no, you can't really sponsor us unless you have all of these policies in place. We need to get to a place where we can have that the resources come from other sources. Thinking about our grant making strategy or thinking about our individual giving program, we really need to really shore up those places so that we can have a different point of leverage, right, with these conversations. And a lot of times that doesn't happen for a lot of pride organizations, particularly really small ones where there might not be a lot of resources and there's one corporate partner that provides them with a lot. That could be that sort of that dynamic is challenging, and it is potentially an issue. And I think it comes down to who is the person at that institution that's your contact and whether or not they're also a champion for you and your work and wanting to support the work because they want to do some change internally in their own organization. And I think those are the best partnerships where you have someone that says, look, we have a lot of work to do here internally. And we also need to be out there supporting organizations like Charlotte Pride. And so how can we do both of those things? And I think those are the places that I really like to really work with and try to think about how do we move the needle on some of these things. But it's very challenging.
And that's definitely across the board, because I would say a good example of that currently right now is Target, because the whole issue with the
Yeah.
DEI Target situation, and Target has always been a long time contributor to Ethnic Festival. So as a sponsor, and so with us boycotting, I was noticing yesterday while I was catching on this weekend, that's a conversation now that a lot of other vendors at Essence Fest are pulling out because Target is still a sponsor for Essence Festival. So it's like, how do you continue the relationship? Like you said, like when you know
Yeah.
that conversation, even if it's how is it left from deaf ears or is it actually taken and going and used to grow? You know what I'm saying? So I definitely think it's a good conversation. I do have another conversation. I don't know if this is too heavy for our topic. As we're talking about pride, knowing politically what's going on, and you was talking about security, is security going to be more heightened this year because of how ICE is acting and being and showing up in places? So is that something that we have to worry about, or is that something the board is trying to deal with?
Yeah, that's always been sort of the number one priority for us as an organization. It is one of those things where, knocking on wood, we've been always really, really good about preparing for worst case scenario, but everything has gone really well. We have a pretty strong relationship with the sort of all of the entities at the city of Charlotte and at Mecklenburg County, where we work with first responders and the police department. And for a lot of the security, we don't have a lot of say or control about the amount and the level of security. We basically just get billed at the end of the festival, right? So that is challenging, and that's something but we know that it's important for us to have security. There are things that we've tried to sort of implement and talk to our partners at the police department and other first responders departments within the city. But I would say that in terms of the level of security, we saw an uptick in the types of security right after the shooting at Pulse. That was a couple of months before Charlotte Pride. And we were designated a special event, which created a different designation for us as an organization and sort of expanded that role that the police department could take at a festival, which then led us to have these internal conversations with them about what does this mean for Black and brown folks, particular folks who are wanting to come to this event, but also don't want to see a highly militarized presence of security and those kinds of things. And so instead of having tanks, can we have dumpster trucks, right? Cutting off the different intersection areas, or can we have more people in plain clothes versus full outfits? Where are we placing our command center in terms of, and the command center is not just about security, but it's also about weather, for example.
Right.
And that's another piece of thing. We have these huge thunderstorms that roll through the South in the summer. And I've been in the command center having to make a decision about whether or not we shut down the festival because there's a storm 30 miles away, and sort of trying to track and see where it's going to come through and if there's lightning involved. So there's a lot of security. There's a lot of folks that are involved in that. And we take it very seriously. We work really closely with folks. We haven't had an indication that there's going to be more security necessarily, but I think it's very in line with what we've had in the past. And there was, like I said, this sort of shift after Pulse and the shooting that happened there, because I think that that was sort of, a time where local police departments were really thinking about pride related activities around the country. And we've worked with them really closely, and we've worked with other local organizations as well who have some very legitimate concerns about security and policing in our events. And we certainly have those conversations, and I think we've been able to navigate them as best as we can with all of our different partners in our community, to the extent that in the past we've talked about, if you feel like certain parts of your folks won't want to attend, is there a smaller event that we could do somewhere else that could allow folks to experience some of that as well? I mean, and trying to come up with options as well. We've had folks who have wanted to use our parade as a way to signal or to talk about an issue, and we've said we can stop the parade. You will have certain time to do that and to talk about whatever the issue is. So there's definitely lots of opportunities at Pride. It's something that the community feels so much ownership about, which I think it's a great thing that folks feel so much ownership about their local Pride festival. And I think that only allows us to be better and to work on being more inclusive to other communities. I was the first person of color to lead Charlotte Pride, and I think have brought in some experiences when DACA was happening under the first Trump administration, and there was a concern that DACA was going to be, suspended. I asked my board to issue, as an organization, to issue a statement in support of DACA. And a lot of them were not immigrants. They didn't really understand what the connection was. And I said, a lot of the folks who actually were leading this DACA work and the immigrant rights movement are queer immigrants themselves. And we, in the queer movement, DACA in particular, learned a lot from coming out, right? The people who came out to their families in the 80s and the 70s and sort of really thinking about this movement. And DACA youth dreamers, they were using a lot of those learnings from the queer rights movement around coming out as undocumented, coming out and sharing their stories, so that folks knew that when you were talking about an undocumented person, when you were talking about an immigrant, you were talking about people that you knew more than likely. And if you didn't share your story, if you didn't share that work, then those folks wouldn't have known that they actually had people that they loved who were part of those communities. And I think that not only is this speak to the intersectionality that I learned so much of the work that I did in the South organizing, but also this idea that a lot of that queer folks are in all communities. And we have to recognize that in order for us to really be truly inclusive and create that welcoming that we want.
I'm so glad you mentioned that. And I would like to actually pull on that thread a little bit, but we're going to go to break really quick. This has been so wonderful for you to hear these stories, to hear this. Daniel, I really appreciate you sharing the insights into organizing Pride, because it's been so much in conversation. And I'm excited to learn more about you as we come back from break right after this.
Welcome back to Power Beyond Pride. We are sitting here with the beautiful and amazing Daniel Valdez. I am Mattie Bynum. You're one of your hosts, and I'm sitting here with my lovely host, Shane Lukas. And Shane, I do believe you had the next question.
This has been such a great conversation, Daniel, so I really appreciate you sharing so much. And thank you for sharing about the important work you did around Trump's first administration, and certainly elevating the important role Dreamers had within that conversation. It's hard not to think about Pride this year in this current cultural moment and not talk about the ICE raids. And as somebody with your own immigrant experience, what that might mean in a climate where North Carolina carries a large population of Latina community members of varying documentations. And so how are you approaching this personally, and also in light of both your professional work, actually, in the work that you do every day, and then also in terms of Pride at this current moment?
Yeah, no. So first of all, it's very disheartening personally, right? I have lots of family and friends with mixed immigration statuses and immigration statuses of all sorts, and that are just great people that are wanting to have an opportunity to contribute to their local economic, cultural, and civic fabric of their life. And what this administration is doing, and the dehumanizing, I would say, impacts these ICE raids have had, but just the messaging itself, right? I think the way that folks have been criminalized, right, or use terms that sort of criminalize them and to degrade them in such a way is so concerning. It's so disheartening. And personally, like I said, it's an area that brings a lot of just anxiety and fear around what's happening. From my work, from sort of the work at Charlotte Pride, one of the things that I've been really proud of over the last few years that I've been on the board is really connecting Charlotte Pride with the organizations that are serving the immigrant or the Latinx community locally in different ways and capacities. So having those connections, having the opportunity to work with a Carolina Migrant Network, for example, that can make sure that they're hosting workshops and know your rights trainings to our local Latin American coalition organization where folks can go and receive support and direct services. And there's a legal clinic. So really, it's really thinking about how do we bring strategic partnerships into that conversation? Like, how can we make sure that we're cross collaborating, that we're not reinventing the wheel? There's a lot of resources, a lot of communities. So like if you're an organization and you are not, your primary focus isn't immigration or immigrant inclusion work or immigrant rights work, there are organizations locally that are doing this work and making sure that you're connected with them and amplifying the things that they're doing. So that's one of the things that we're doing, and we've been working with, like I said, folks like Hispanic Federation, Carolina Migrant Network, the Latin American Coalition, all of these organizations locally to make sure that we know what's happening and that we're able to have sort of a network of folks that we can connect to if anything happens at the festival, and that we need to serve those resources. And then in terms of just my day-to-day work, I work for an organization that works with local communities to make their communities more welcoming and inclusive to newcomers, including immigrants and refugees more broadly. And it's been tough, right? I think we've seen an array of sort of responses to this work, from communities that really want to double down on their work to others who want to find more strategic ways to really bring in resources and address what's happening. But at the end of the day, I think we all agree that our communities are not safer with more ICE raids. Our communities are not more secure. In fact, it's the opposite, right? That these kinds of raids are undermining people's trust in their local communities and local institutions. And they are really creating a narrative that isn't conducive to having a community that everyone can thrive in, and not just the folks that are mostly impacted, the folks that are being targeted, but the sort of the consequences that these actions have on other communities. As we talked about, what we're seeing a lot is racial profiling. If you look Black or brown, you don't have some type of dignification, you're being picked up. That's racial profiling. We're seeing an escalation, an increase of that. We're seeing community folks not wanting to shop or afraid to go out and do the things that they were doing before, which is leading to a lot of businesses getting less customers, particularly immigrant-owned businesses or in communities that are heavily immigrant-owned or immigrant communities. And so all of these things are having an impact. And I think that at the same time, I've been really heartened by the response from young folks, from folks of all communities that are showing up and are really uplifting their voices to tell these communities that there's another America, that we are also a different country, that we also have folks who believe that if you're here to support your community and to contribute, that you should have pathways and you should have opportunities to do so.
And this is not to discredit the civil rights movement of the 50s, 60s, and 70s, but I would definitely say here in 2025, I am very proud of our young people stepping up. I am so proud of seeing younger people step up, because it's like, and I was told a friend of mine the other day, I was like, these gentlemen don't know what they getting in here, because these young people, they not backing down and they not going away, and they don't care about respecting your boundaries or not. They're going to tell you how they feel. I think that's a beautiful thing. And I'm glad that we continue to foster that community. And I do want to take this question and lead right into your next one. So you are the Chief External Affairs Officer at Welcoming America. So how does your lived experience and also just seeing what's going on politically, how does that affect your job? Does that play into your job?
Yeah, so Welcoming America has been around for about 15 years. We're a nonprofit organization that works with local communities, particularly local governments across the country. We have a network of 300 members, from small communities in Nebraska to large cities in places like Dallas and San Jose, and smaller mid-sized cities like Charlotte and Dayton, Ohio. And what we do is we provide technical assistance and coaching to these local communities around what kinds of programs, policies, and practices they should have at the local level to be more inclusive for newcomers, including immigrants and refugees. And so a lot of our work really centers around bridge building work. How do you bring together long-term residents and newcomers in a community to do some bridge building work? how do you think about unlocking the full potential that newcomers bring that then supports the entire community as a whole? And so that's a big range, right? And it covers anyone that's new to your community. And they may be coming from Georgia to North Carolina, and you as a community have an interest in making sure that folks that are new to your community feel welcome and that are actually able to participate in the civic, economic, and cultural life of their community. But we know that immigrants, for example, might have higher barriers of entry into these spaces. So then that's where sort of that focus comes in, right? Someone that speaks the language, they don't necessarily need language services, or that you have as a community a language access policy. But actually for folks that are new, that are from a different country, that don't speak the language, and same thing goes for economic development, for their policing systems, their zoning policies and laws. So it can get very wonky. But we also run a certification program. So we actually certified cities as welcoming based on a standard of over 120 different program and policy recommendations that a local government needs to have in place. And so we currently have 30 certified welcoming communities across the country, and we're looking to expand. And so this work, what's happening right at the federal level, has direct impact into the ways in which particular municipal governments want to lean in or not, or how much they want to lean into this work, given the targets that they can become for the federal administration in terms of funds and lawsuits and all of these different things that are coming out. But the work of Welcoming America is that if you do this work and you bring in a multi-sector collaborative and you create this foundation, that it allows you to react in a much easier, swifter way than if you didn't have those relationships and that work in place beforehand. So we know that we have lots of communities that we've been working with, but we know that these communities are also ready to push back, and we're ready to really exemplify what America is and should be about, and the values and principles that we have as a local community. And so, yeah, it's been impactful. We've seen an uptick in communities wanting to figure out ways to really let their local residents know that they are welcome in those communities, and that they're trying to do what they can and what they have control over to support. And as we know, it's not as easy, and it's very complex in terms of what a municipal government can and can't do in terms of what they have power over. And so navigating those complexities and helping those municipal governments think about ways to message and to talk to their communities and to engage partners and to create programs that can share a different story of who we are as a society.
Well, and that's the important part, right? Is building those bridges, laying that foundation, and letting people know there's a space for every story, that we actually thrive in multiplicity. And I love that that's a lot of what your program does. And part of that is getting to know everybody. And we kind of want to get to know you a little bit more, Daniel.
Yeah.
So that's what we're about to do in our speed round. So if you're ready, we're going to take a little bit, we're going to go beyond the programs and into your life. I feel like we need a theme song that kind of like a little, I don't know, chime system.
I told you we need to have Who Wants to Be a Millionaire theme song, with the lights coming down.
You're ready, Dan. So your first question, and you can't spend time thinking about it, so do your best to kind of come up with a quick answer. Don't overthink them. We just want to get to know you. So how many languages can you say hello in?
Probably 5.
Oh, okay.
Maybe.
5 is a round number. 5 is a divine number, so that's a good thing. You want to say hello in any of the languages?
Hola, hello, oi, bonjour. Actually, probably 4 then. Let's keep it at 4.
Oh, you got one. I'll throw you one. Ciao. You can do ciao.
Ciao. Italian. There we go.
Bravo.
What's the weirdest gift you've ever received?
The weirdest gift I have ever received. I don't know. Can I change it to one of the coolest recently that I've gotten?
Sure.
I got my, let's see, I just big Harry Potter fan. And so I just got this little wand from the Harry Potter store in Chicago.
Oh, that's adorable. Do we have a favorite book?
Goblet of Fire.
Goblet of Fire. Good choice.
Yes.
Okay. So we'll go with the next question is, okay, what's the funniest insult you can come up with?
Oh my goodness. Funniest insult I
Sweet
can come up.
rotis. You don't strike me as an insult person, Daniel.
No, I
I just
know.
listen
I'm
to
very
the word.
sarcastic, but I don't know. I guess just sarcasm usually, but can't think of anything in particular at the moment.
Okay, best compliment.
I love to eat, so the best compliment I can give to friends if they cook something and it's really delicious and good. Yeah, that's if I say this was really great or the food was amazing, that's a big compliment for me. I love to eat, just like everything to do.
There we go. Love it.
I love that. Look, I'm glad y'all not asking me these questions because y'all know I know an answer off the top of my head every 5 seconds. So moving on to the next question. Would you rather be overdressed or underdressed, Daniel?
Underdress.
Really?
Yeah, I think I would probably like to be underdressed. I like being in very comfortable, but sort of loungy type of outfit. So at least I'll be comfortable if I'm underdressed.
I hear that one. I'm all for that. All right. So, in your opinion, what would be the best and most amazing buy one, get one sale item of all time?
Oh, I love a good sale. Let's see, buy one, get one. Like the best one, I guess, could be like a house. Buy one house, get one free.
Like a duplex deal.
Wait a minute, but can we still get one property tax instead of two? Because that's the issue. Because
That's a good question. You have to read the fine print. We have to read the fine print, but yeah. And then I'll just have I either have my family or my bestie move in next door, and then just have some cool neighbors.
I like it.
what's one vice? I know we all have these. What is one vice you wish you could get rid of?
My, what's one advice? I would say probably mm, eating too much. Like I will, even if I'm to stuff, I will try something. I will have a bite of something. So, and I also love to just, if I'm traveling, go to as many different places to get all kinds of different things to eat. And so it is also an expensive vice, I would say, depending on.
But that's a big part of travel.
Yes, of course. It's one of the best parts of traveling.
And I think that's also a Southern vice all the way around because of the fact we never gonna say no. If someone could think about it,
Yeah.
we could be at a family dinner and done eating when somebody come in with a pan or something, but oh, you let me go out and get a little taste of
Yes.
that fish you bring. Yeah, we do that.
Well, and every
Some
dish
people
is
have
like
much more self-control over those kinds of things than I do. So kudos to them.
well, I think more of us are in your boat, Daniel, than not. And I think to me, it's a portrait of anywhere I've ever gone, the type of food that's there. And if honestly, if somebody introduces something new and I'm like, I will give that a go. I don't know what you did to that fish, but I'm going to eat it. And I may not have it again, but I'm
Yeah.
going to try it. And that is how gefilte fish ended up in my gut.
I'm trying to
For
say
the first
fish
and
may
last.
not be a dear reference for this conversation. That could be taken in so many ways.
Hey, you know what? I whether it's the Adriatic Sea or the Atlantic Ocean, wherever it is, if it's food, I'm game. Give me a go. So Daniel, I get it. So Daniel, what is your biggest turn on?
Ooh, that's a good one. I would probably say an engaging conversation.
Ooh, we love a
I
sapiosexual.
like that, yeah. Because woohoo, hey, free your mind and the rest will follow, honey. I'm telling you, go on and get in there.
Exactly.
Well, okay, so
Yes.
this is actually a good one. I like this one because I'm actually working on mine currently. So, what's the best thing that you have already crossed off your bucket list?
I would say one of the things I've always wanted to do growing up was to go to Istanbul, and I did, and it was beautiful, and I enjoyed it, and so crossed it off my bucket list.
And I have to believe you did pistachio, the baklava, right? Yeah.
Did all the stuff. Yes, did lots of food and lots of sightseeing. It was great.
Oh, good choice. And an amazing food city.
Yes.
All right, your go-to board game.
Yeah, Code Names. There's a one called Code Names that I really like. If y'all haven't played that, check out Code Names. It's a really fun game.
Okay, two sentence explanation. What is it?
So there's two. There's a word version and an image version. But basically, what you do is you lay it out on the floor on the table. There's two teams, and there's sort of one person that's describing. That sort of says, let's say there's 4 different things, and you have to find one single word to connect as many things on that puzzle. And you say that word, and then your teams have to sort of point or guess which ones are connected. And if they might choose the other teams, or they might choose the assassin, which is if your team chooses that card, then they lose and the game is over. But it's called Code Names. It's really fun, and just really, I think, as a way to showcase like how creative people can get with one word. So, and especially for people, there's lots of, if you have inside jokes or anything like that, there's lots of ways that you can make that the game really fun. Code Names. I like the picture version, but there's also the text or word version of it too.
Well, Daniel, on behalf of the host team and just to show us off, we want to say thank you for stopping by. We have truly enjoyed the conversation that we've had with you today. It's been very enlightening and insightful. We typically ask one question to all of our viewers, and that is, what does Power Beyond Pride mean to you? And I would say that you have already magnificently answered that, just talking about all the things that Charlotte Pride does throughout the year that goes beyond just the Pride. But I do want to take just 2 minutes real quick. What does Power Beyond Pride mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me it means bringing everything and all of you into all of the spaces, and that includes, I always try to remind myself and others, joy and rest. And so when we think about this work and the times that we're in, it's really important to also make time for joy and for rest. And to me, that is where I am trying to go beyond what I am typically used to in this work, is trying to make more time for that joy and rest. And I encourage folks to do the same, because it's a tough time and we need all of us. And joy and rest is forms of persistence.
And where can people find you on your social media? Where can we follow you?
Yeah, well, we encourage folks to follow us at charlottepride.org. And then we have an Instagram, we have Facebook, CLT Pride. And for folks who are interested in welcomingamerica.org as well. And I am on Instagram as DanDamex, DanDamex.
All right. And I am your co-host, Mattie Bynum. You can find me at Instagram, MattieSmall737, Facebook, Mattie Bynum. And if you see me in public, don't be afraid. Just say hello, because I will say hey back.
That is true. She will do that. Daniel, it is such wonderful joy to be able to spend time with you today. Thank you so much for sharing your own story, the work you're doing there in Charlotte, the impact you're having across the country in your day job, but also just your own, the courage that it takes to bring your own lived experience into this work. It's an important thing, and it really demonstrates Power Beyond Pride. So thank you for that. I am your co-host, Shane Lukas. I am a lifelong harm reduction activist. And again, I will sing all the words to Shebop. If you ask me, I will gladly do that. You can find me at shanelukas.com or greatidea.com. You can find me at either one. Remember to subscribe and get your friends to subscribe to Power Beyond Pride on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. And check out our site at powerbeyondpride.com.
Power Beyond Pride is a project from A Great Idea, a clear-owned design and content agency. Learn more about them at greatidea.com.
This episode is produced by Shane Lukas. That'd be me. Smita Sarkar is the project developer. Our editor is Jarrett Redding, and support from Ian Wilson. Hi, Ian.
We are both part of the podcast Awesome Host team here, me and Shane, along with beautiful people as well. And we invite you to send in your questions and comments at Power Beyond Pride so we can always stay abreast and always coming at you originally.
And you can check out new episodes every week. We look forward to queer change making with you that time, this time, and every time. Thank you from all of us at Power Beyond Pride. Thank you, Daniel, for joining us. And we look forward to catching up with you again soon.
Thank you so much.